Wanted to share a few housekeeping items. As you know, we're using the Zoom platform, so only the host and experts will be on video. If you would like to make comments or ask a question, you can type it in the chat box below. Please take a minute to locate the chat box in your Zoom app. This session is being recorded and will be available to watch and share this week. And now I have the pleasure of introducing you to the Aspen Brain Institute's founder and president, Glenda Greenwald.
Thank you, Steve. Welcome, everyone. Hello to people all over the country and maybe all over Europe as well. Welcome to our third Zoom Aspen Brain Institute Expert Speaker Series. We are offering this free series, hoping the series will be the foundation of building a global online community focused on brain health, our main goal. Our objective is not simply to reach a lot of people, but to help a lot of people. And we want this online community to develop as one focused solely on brain health, or especially on brain health. We'd like to thank Lugano Diamonds for their generous support as our national underwriter. We really appreciate Lugano Diamonds for choosing Aspen Brain Institute as a nonprofit worthy of their values and their goals, and especially for making our Zoom Expert Series free to the public and able to be viewed worldwide. Thank you to Lugano Diamonds. We also want to thank Alpine Bank for their generous sponsorship over these many years now. And just for everyone to know, they are the best community bank, maybe in the world, but especially in Aspen. And thanks to our friends at Brain Futures, this group is translating science to advance human potential. And thanks also to our friends at the American Federation for Research on Aging. Thank you all for your support. First, I want to tell you just two little bits about Aspen Brain Institute, and then quickly get to our exciting speaker, Dr. Sandi Chapman. So first, about Aspen Brain Institute. At Aspen Brain Institute, we are dedicating our lives and our work to making sure that this is the last generation of 60 to 95-year-olds who are decimated by Alzheimer's and other dementias, of which there are no cures. At the Aspen Brain Institute, we believe that this is one of the greatest global challenges of our time. So with that in mind, our big aspirational goal, our real mission now, is to create a brain healthy planet. It has to go all over the world and help people all over the world. So now in the time of COVID, we're producing this expert series of speakers. It's free to the invited public. Over 2,000 from all over the US have signed up for this series. The purpose of the series is to increase brain health literacy and to share our access with everyone to the top minds and evidence-based research on brain health. Now I'd like to introduce our great guest speaker, our expert speaker, Dr. Sandi Chapman. So, Sandi. Sandra Chapman, I have to read this because Sandi's got so many credentials. Sandra Chapman is a cognitive neuroscientist, founder and chief director of the Center for Brain Health, also the D. Wiley Distinguished Professor in Brain Health at the University of Texas in Dallas. Sandi began her career in the 1970s as a speech pathologist, where she often worked with children diagnosed with severe autism. During this time, Sandi encountered several autistic children able to solve complex puzzles despite their difficult diagnosis. This contradiction sparked Sandi's interest in the brain's potential. Her fascination with the brain's modifiability later evolved into the idea of a multidisciplinary center housing brain researchers and therapists working to prevent, arrest, and reverse brain traumas. So that's the big picture. Some that has happened since she had the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas. Sandi has developed unique brain training programs for children and adults. She's worked with third graders and Navy SEALs. Sandi was such a pioneer in the field of brain training and brain optimization that she trademarked the phrase brain health 25 years ago when the field did not even exist. So welcome, Sandi. I can't wait to hear your story. Ciao, Sandi. Come, Sandi.
Great. Thank you, Glenda. And thank you for what you do to spread the word around the world. You're the dynamo in our penultimate brain to kind of model after. I'm just really grateful to be here. So today I'm going to talk fast because I have a lot to share and I want time for questions. But what I'm going to share with you is to tell you why what we're doing is really changing the way we look at our brain health to move it out of stigma. First, I'm going to share that we are category breakers. And I'm going to talk to you about what that is and why you want to become a category breaker along with us. The second thing that I'm going to share is that we are rebels. We are challenging the status quo. And you're going to hear what the status quo has been for far too long and what we're doing to challenge that. And then third, you're going to hear what are we doing so that you can future-proof your brain for a better life and a better world, as Glenda said. So let me pull up my slides and we'll get started. So Glenda shared this, the Center for Brain Health that I started in 1999. What I want to tell you is that when we first started, no one had even heard of the term, and we had a team of about 25 people. And when we moved into our center about 5 years later, we rapidly grew to over 120 scientists, research clinicians uniquely focused on how we can strengthen the brain to make it work better, longer, stronger, and be more fit. Then we had so many people come to us, we needed to do something to launch the Brain Performance Institute. And then we have an imaging center that's uniquely looking not at the brain getting worse, can we diagnose it, but how can we begin to tell that your brain is getting better? And then the Brain Health Project. So these are the centers. If you haven't been to see us, I know Glenda's been and Doran's been. This is the Center for Brain Health where we have our 120 scientists. This is where we have neurons and lights and so much going on. We're Navy SEALs, corporations. We want every single person to ask, is my brain better, stronger, and get rid of the stigma. So what is a category breaker? What is it that we're doing? What we are doing is creating an entirely new category of health. Think about this. Right now, the only time you go see a doctor for your brain is when you've had a stroke, you think you may have dementia, or you're suffering from some pretty severe things. Well, you don't do that for your teeth. You don't wait until you have really severe toothaches, do you? So this new category is a new category of health. It's a new category of discovery and also empowerment, because it's not enough to just say, this is what brain health is if you can't do something about it. And what we're trying to do with this entire new frame and this new frontier is to do for the brain what's been achieved for the heart. So in the last 40 years, thanks to the Framingham study that started in 1948, every single person all around the world, regardless of what walk of life they're in and how old or young they are, they know things that they can do to keep their heart healthy. So that now we have doubled our health and reduced heart attacks. And when people do have a heart attack, it's much rare that they die from having a heart attack. So we're going to do for the brain what's been achieved for the heart. We're going to double brain performance. And we're going to show right now our peak brain years are about age 30. We're going to double that so that your peak brain performance is 60, 70. What about 90? Why wouldn't we? We're going to live that long, so let's do something about it. And we're learning so much with our new technology, and I'm going to, if I have time to share at least a question, how we're learning that people, regardless of what age they are embracing it. So what I want to share now that's transforming it, where people around the world are going to be able to be involved in this new category breaker, is the Brain Health Project. And the Brain Health Project is translating the science today so that people in remote parts of the world can take advantage of it. And I think if someone were to ask me, Sandi, what do you think is the most exciting thing that has happened to you? And I would say it's having done research in brain health with brain imaging and cognitive training and looking at people and having collaborators from around the country and the world, is that these individuals are now joining this effort. They want to be part of this. So if you look around very quickly, and I'm not going to introduce all of them, but I want to introduce you to a few, you can see all of the major institutes, Berkeley, MIT, Illinois, Harvard, Oxford, that are involved in this. And there's only about 50 people that are comprehensively looking at brain health in the world. And to date, we've got 32 of those on our team that are willing to give us their IP and be part of this. So it's an exciting time for us. In terms of who that is, one of the individuals is Dr. Jeff Ling. And I think, Glenda, I'm not sure if you've met him, but Dr. Ling is like, if he was in this talking right now to you, he is a PhD pharmacologist, he's a MD neurologist, he was head of DARPA, he started the whole brain cognition interface of a brain, think, a thought, and move, artificial limbs. He was the main military doctor that pulled back active duty service members out when they had concussions, and he's on the NFL players. He is a genius mind, and his mother was actually involved in the moonshot. But when I asked him to help me figure this out, he said, Sandi, I want to be part of this. Do you realize that this is something, what we're going to do, that will literally change the life for every single human being? And rarely do you get to be part of something that benefits humanity. The second individual that's part of this is Dr. Ian Robertson, and he has a wonderful accent. He's from Ireland. He's one of the top experts in Glenda. I think you shared the editorial that we wrote. He was involved in that. How do you use stress to optimize your performance? And he said, Sandi, this is the first time I feel like our science for brain plasticity is going to make a difference in individuals. The next individual is Dr. Mark Esposito, that's head of, he's a neurologist and he's head of neuroscience at Berkeley. And actually, I've been trying to recruit him for 15 years to come. But he said, I'll be part of this, and I won't move to Dallas, but I'll do whatever you want, because, you know, cardiologists have it figured out, but we as neurologists, we're a little behind the 8 ball, and I'm ready to join your team and be part of this. And then Mike Merzenich, many of you know because he's been involved, is really the godfather of brain plasticity, has shown things. So we have the dynamic team. I think the team is now, because we're living longer, why wouldn't we do something now that we know that we aren't stuck with the brain we're born with? Our brain grows stronger when it's exercised, or when we do things that really aren't so good, that are toxic for our brain, then it actually falters. And this is what brain plasticity or neuroplasticity is all about. Your brain changes moment to moment by how you use it, either in good ways or bad ways. Don't you want to know what the good ways are? We want individuals to take the science and translate that today. So what are we doing in this new frontier to make our brains stronger, to do better? Well, I told you, we're rebels. We are sick of the status quo, which is just like yours. Fine, You may get a benchmark, but all the benchmark is done is just to see, can we detect Alzheimer's disease early? Well, don't you want to know if you're 20 that next year your brain's going to be even stronger, or if you're 40 stronger, or 80 stronger? So challenging the status quo, we have been stuck for the last 100 years with this outdated notion that your cognitive capacity is fixed, that your peak brain performance is in your late 20s, maybe 30s. Well, I tell you, I'm way past that, and that sucks. So we are challenging that, and the science is showing that that is actually false in terms of what's happening. And you know, when we think about our brain as something that is fixed, well, no wonder we all have so much stigma. No wonder our military have stigma about PTSD if it's fixed. No wonder people who've been in trauma or think they have Alzheimer's disease, if there's nothing you can do, why would you want to know? Well, guess what? You can do more for your brain than your teeth or your heart. So we're going to change all that. So I hope you're curious. We are trying to get a group of committed people to be really into this, to take advantage of neuroplasticity, to turn the outdated notions of the brain being stalled on its head. I love the quote by Stephen Hawking, who I think is one of the genius minds of our time, when he said, you know what intelligence is? It is the ability to adapt, to change, to innovate. Well, we certainly need that in our day and time because we're living in such an unpredictable future. And we agree that's what intelligence is. So what we're doing now with all the science for the last 3 decades to show is defining what is brain health. You know, right now it has been defined for so long just in terms of absence of disease or dementia. Well, that's way outdated a definition. Once we define it, then we want to be able to measure it. How do we know, like we do with our cholesterol and our heart rate and our blood pressure, how can we know where you stand? And then when you measure it, what can I do to make it better? So we want to make sure that people have a prescription, there's steps they can take to make it better. And then we want to constantly upgrade the research because, you know, I think that brain science and brain health in this whole new category of health is one of the fastest growing fields. And because it is so new, the information is changing very rapidly, and we want to be able to take advantage of that. So what has happened at the Center for Brain Health and with our collaborators, what are we doing? We're taking the science that we've done for the last 3 decades, and what the science has shown us is that truly you can double your brain achievement. For example, Glenda mentioned that we've worked, it's really with middle schoolers that we've worked, and we have to date worked with 82,000 middle schoolers. Our brain is undergoing more change in middle school than any other time in our life, except for the first 2 months, and that's where reasoning and decision making and problem solving. We've been able to take teenagers in poverty, teenagers at risk, and shown that we can double their performance in academic science, math, history, and English, commended scores, double graduation rates, and triple their number of AP classes. Wow, wouldn't you want to do that in a short period of time? The second thing with our focus on brain health is to show that we can inoculate the brain against the stressors of life. I mean, you know, the #1 cause that's facing all of us, especially today, but in the workplace for the last 10 years is the stress, the depression, our military, they're coming back with post-traumatic stress, some of the things. What if we can inoculate the brain so that people can rebound quicker, and not only rebound to bounce back, but to bounce forward and bounce upward? And that's what we've shown is possible when you teach people to use this amazing engine, 3-pound right inside our head. And third is to show that we can extend the peak brain span to match our lifespan. So the greatest achievement of the last 100 years is the doubling of the lifespan, but nothing's been done to extend our brains to our peak brain span, so that literally every single long-term study that just follows people shows that there is a decline in terms of speed of processing and how fast your brain and cortical thickening and speed of connectivity. Well, we've been able to show that healthy individuals 50 to 70 to 80 can literally increase the speed of neural connectivity and regain almost 2 to 3 decades. So by taking advantage of some of the trainings and stay on track, think about this. We really do get a penultimate brain with all the wisdom and rich experience of being older, but a younger working brain. And sometimes when people say, I wish my brain was younger, I say, no, you don't, because we love our brains and all the experience that we have. So really we have the chance to make a better brain. And I'm not going to have time to go through this, but when we do a brain health index and we define it, it's not just about your memory, which everyone says, oh, my memory is so bad. You know, things aren't going so well. Well, innovation that we just talked about, Stephen Hawking, strategy, knowing what to ignore from the get-go, and being able to be an algorithmic thinker. These are the things that when people get better and better as they go from their 30s to 40s to 80s, should get better. But we're also interested in your mindset. Do you realize that you can get better? What's the complexity of what you're doing, and what's the nature of your sleep? We think one of the most powerful things you can do right now to stay brain healthy is look at your sleep. And then we're also looking at psychological well-being, resilience, quality of life, and emotional intelligence, social network, compassion, changes the brain and the whole neurochemistry. Today, it is unassailable that cognitive training works. We have over 600, not just us personally, this is the composite of our team. The science of neuroplasticity builds brain health. If I were to tell you that I had a drug for this, I'd be a gazillionaire. But what if it's what you do? What if it's the way you use the brain that makes it stronger? This is what the Brain Health Project does. We're going to show that we can help, youth to improve their education. We're going to show that adults not just stave off dementia, which we think is certainly possible, but can improve whatever age they are, their innovative thinking, problem solving, reduce the risk of dementia. Dr. Monka, that's part of our team, they've shown that when you do their training, that's part of the Brain Health Project, it reduces Alzheimer's by 30%. And people that have concussions, which is the number one thing that happens to us, we can show a decrease in depression and reduction in stress. Wow. Wouldn't it be great if all of us became citizen scientists? That's what we're seeking to be part of this Brain Health Project. And what that means is we're going to enroll, we're doing a landmark study to show that people, and we're going to enroll a minimum of 120,000 people who want to do a brain health index every single year and challenge themselves and set their own goals and take advantage of the training. 80% of these will be on the platform only. The other 20% will come into some of these centers of excellence and do brain imaging and genetics and blood workup and exercise and cortical metrics. Wouldn't it be fun to see and to say, I can hardly wait to see my brain health index instead of, oh my gosh, what are you going to tell me? And it's going to be a discovery engine. I know that some of you are asking, well, how do we join this brain health movement? Here's where you can register to stay abreast of what's going on. We have 2 major pilots right now. Once we get through with those, we are going to open it up in January, we're hoping, so that people around the world can enroll. So the outreach is going to be massive. It is a platform that people can access. And actually, when we first started with this, we're calling it Operation Rhino with people, I thought that people might have difficulty, and depending on how much technology used. Well, they haven't. They have shown us it's very easy to use, and they're engaging it in ways that I never imagined possible. So in this last few minutes before I take time for questions, the last thing is, wouldn't it be great if you can do things right now to future-proof your brain and keep at it so that you have your best brain years are ahead of you. Our mind is our greatest asset. The only constant in our world today is, guess what? Change. And man, have we experienced it in this last 3 to 4 months. Unpredictable, unknown, constantly changing, everything's in flux, everything as we knew it. The greatest way to solve that is through your mind. Think about how often, and people often ask me, Sandy, how often do I need to do this? Is it like if I do my training, am I ready for the rest of my life? Well, if you brush your teeth one time, are you ready for the rest of your life? If your brain changes and is built by how you use it, this is something that's going to take a concerted effort. The good news is that it's how you use your brain in your everyday life. For brain health, to see how our mind is used and build resilience, our future work skills depend on it. The brain needed tomorrow is very different from the brain for the last 20 years. So how are we going to adjust to that? Today we know that multitasking is almost what I say is cigarette smoking for the lungs is what multitasking is to the brain. And stress is epidemic, and it's destroying the hippocampus. People under severe stress look like someone just like with early Alzheimer's disease in terms of their memory problems. And we also know that the cost of dementia is staggering. If we could push it out 2 years, 5 years, there will be a significant reduction in greater cost of life. The time is now. Your brain is in your hands, and there's everything that you can do about it. Everything that you can achieve begins and ends with your brain. When we make choices to exercise better, to eat better, change our jobs, seek new things, learning, innovative, it's all in our brain. So we hope you're anticipating what's ahead. And here's again the Brain Health Project. And what the end goal for us is to have a better brain, a better life, and a better world. Thank you, Glenda, for letting me share this with this audience.
Spectacular. You've come such a long way since we first started discussing the Brain Health Project. It's really happening, and it's beautiful to hear. And I love your passion, Sandy. I want to introduce in a minute Dr. Ronnie Stangler. She and I are going to ask some expert-to-expert questions to Sandy Chapman, and then we'll open it up to all attendees. So I just want to tell you about Dr. Ronnie Stangler, and I hope her picture is going to come up on the screen. There's Ronnie. Hey, Ronnie, I just tell people I asked you for the tiniest biography because your biography is very long. In any case, I'm about to introduce Dr. Ronnie Stangler. She is a physician, a psychiatrist, and a family office advisor. She's the founder of Genome Advisory. She consults with individuals, global families, and their advisors, helping them navigate the new science of genomics. It's very exciting. Also, Ronnie is an esteemed member of the Aspen Brain Institute's Board of Directors. And by the way, Dr. Sandi Chapman is a member of our brand new Scientific Advisory Council on brain health. So Ronnie, I know you have some questions for Dr. Chapman. Would you go first and ask some of your questions, please?
My pleasure. And Sandy, first of all, thank you. You provide hope and inspiration at a time when we all so desperately need it. As for questions, I almost want to say, don't let me get started. I have so many, but let me begin. Let me begin with them. You said on a number of occasions this afternoon, you spoke about growing stronger brains through exercise. through exercising our brains. Could you share with us some specific exercises, examples of exercises that you have used with current subjects and anticipate using in future research to enhance brain functionality? And as a part of that, could you provide some recommendations for our audience today as to things they might begin today?
Yes, thank you. And there's a lot to share. But what we do is we train people strategies. So it's not like going off and doing crossword puzzles, whatever. Your brain is very specific in terms of what you do. It's not that crossword puzzles aren't good for your brain. They certainly are. They make you better at crossword puzzles. But it's how you use your brain in your everyday life. So, and I'm just going to give you a few very concrete tips that we do. So we teach people, number one, they need to prime their brain to be ready to learn and to do a task. And so to prime your brain, that means, number one, to just do one thing at a time. Make sure that what you're working on, that you are just doing that one thing. Because if you're trying to do two things at once, learn something new, like if some of you are listening to this talk, but you're also typing some emails or watching a TV on the side, you're going to get very little from this. And it actually agitates your brain. So you're working against when you could use this time. So doing one thing at a time is one of the first things that we teach people. The second thing we teach people in priming your brain is before you start a task to just take a quick break, 5 minutes. Your brain needs to reset. It likes to be energetic to get started. Like before I started this talk, I took about 5 minutes just to kind of let my brain reset. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to say, just calm down, and then I can hit it fast and charged. Typically what we do is we don't have any stopping points anymore. So we're just going 24/7, this task, running like crazy people. And our brain is really burned up. So just by stepping back, priming your brain to rest a minute, and then it's ready to go. A second big thing that we do is we teach people to do what I call integrated reasoning, and that, or algorithmic thinking, when Glenda asked me what we do. And that's when you take in information, like hopefully you've heard some new things today that your brain literally grows or shrinks by how you use it. So you take information in, and then you very quickly zoom out to say, what does that mean? Let me abstract the essence and distill it into just a bullet point, and then zoom out to say, how am I going to apply that to my life? It's that very quick agility that almost pumps up your brain when you take in new information from something. Then you go big picture and say, what is the point that is resonating with me? And for each of you, it's probably very different. And then how am I going to apply that to my life? So it's the application, and it's that doing it very quickly where your brain gets this neural connectivity that goes faster, and you strengthen it. So it's like the sit-ups for the brain, if you will. And using that strategy, we use our brain all day long. So it's not like I have to go off and spend 10 minutes doing that. What we do day in and day out is do that. But what we typically do is we're lazy listeners. We're very passive. We don't work on it. When we have table conversation, it's very superficial. We don't think in these broader contexts to synthesize and distill things that makes you go frontal lobe, and then figure out as many possible ways to use that as possible. That's what makes your brain very nimble and agile, and changes the neuropharmacy of it, to be quite frankly.
Wow.
You're fabulous responses only stimulate more questions, but Glenda,
Okay.
I know that I will
Well,
restrain myself.
I'm going to get back to one because everybody wants all Sandy's best tips. And she was quoted in an article that's called 38 Genius Habits That Your 80-Year-Old Brain Will Thank You for Doing Today. But Sandy, I think you've answered about half of that and in very nice depth. So I'm going to go on to a different question for you. Aspen Brain Institute is planning to initiate a project to make Aspen the first, maybe not the first, but a brain healthy community. And I recall that you suggested that we offer our citizens a brain health checkup from the neck up, and perhaps in your terms, an annual brain health index. But so I would love to know if that is still one of your recommendations, and also why is that important? Please.
Yeah, so, one of the things that we want people is to get rid of the stigma about the neck up, because every single person, they don't have to have PTSD or dementia in the family. If you go, we just feel like we're still sitting for our SAT scores, or someone's going to do an intelligence test and tell me I'm not as smart as I always thought I was. Well, that's wrong. Our intellect, our mental capacity can get stronger. And so the reason that it's important for communities to build, if you think about it, it's not just schools. We know the brain's built in schools, but then the place that our brain is built longest is actually in our work environments. Whether it's a restaurant or police force or libraries, the place where people are working. Well, are the things that they're doing building stronger or worse brains for themselves? So when you begin to have the whole community challenging each other and say, hey, are you doing your brain prime time? Then we think that it's going to catch on a lot faster, and will change the way that people can embrace it, from teachers to communities, to say, what if your brain from 1 year to the next at least stayed as healthy as it is today? That's pretty remarkable, because it's not happening. It's not happening in our youth. We're having higher levels of anxiety, greater addiction, so they're not going to college. We're having it in our 20-year-olds where they are not getting new jobs. They're not seeing possibilities. So it's not, we tend to think our brain is fine until retirement, or sometime later, but it's a lifespan approach. So how do we, as quick as possible, and the way I feel like we could do it is by building communities like the Aspen or Dallas, or, and began to have some competition as, how much do I want my brain to be stronger from one point to the next, instead of, ooh, what are you going to tell me, and how much dementia is it? And so to really embrace, Aspen's done it for physical fitness. You're certainly known for that, and for exercise and for nutrition. Those things support brain health, but they're not enough to really build the connections that we're talking about. So it's got to be really this comprehensive approach to get everything going forward.
Just one more quickie in that regard of having an annual brain health checkup or index. What age might we start? What might be a good idea? How young might we go?
So we're starting at 10.
Oh,
for people
great.
At 10 years old. And certainly you could go younger, but a lot of the, people younger than that are, in school, and you kind of know, how they are. And eventually we'll probably go down all the way, but you're never too young and you're never too old. When people say, well, I'm 90, am I too old? I went, no, if you could maintain your brain from 90 to 91, that would be tremendous, because the greatest loss is in the end of our life, and it's the greatest cost burden. So it doesn't matter whether you're young and you start to strengthen it, just like we know for physical fitness, the stronger you are. If you break something, you're going to rebound quicker, whether you're 20, 50, or 80, or 90. So the brain is the same way. The more resilience you have, the longer you're going to be able to push out and really rebound from things like chemo brain, general anesthesia. You know, if you do need to have a heart surgical device.
Ronnie, please, one more question, Ronnie. Dr.
Sandy,
Dr.
you referenced your work with 82,000 middle schoolers, and that stimulates for me a question about youth during this time of COVID. Given that schools remain closed, summer is apparently canceled, the reopening of schools in the fall is still unclear. What advice do you have for parents of youth to best support and educate their children during this time of such restriction, physical at least, restriction and confinement to home during this period of COVID?
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie. Great question. You know, I think a lot of parents are worried, oh, and my kids are, you know, taking the test, they're not learning math, algebra, whatever it is. And how are we going to make up for that lost time? What we know from the work that we've done really, and we actually have worked with kids as young as 6, is that, think about this, the brain was wired to create new knowledge. The brain is wired to innovate, to see new ways of doing things. What better time to challenge these young minds than to say, you're in a new environment now. Why don't you innovate where your study space should look like? Why don't you innovate in terms of how much time, whether you could study better outside or inside? You know, kids are starting to, you know, design different things. What do you think this is good about this assignment? And what do you think is that stupid about it? And start to let them and draw something for it. If you can stretch the mind to create new knowledge during this time, it's going to be more powerful than if they learned 100 facts or did that math problem or learned certain, and not that I do believe in facts, but I'm not saying that. But if we don't inspire the young mind to create new ways of doing things and having different conversations, and one of the things that I also think is at an all-time low has been almost this relating to each other, and especially families, because of our technology. What if we use this time to say, why don't you create a game where we can do some fun things and share different things about us? That innovation is going to do more to change the mind, to make them curious, and what I call citizen sciences about what the potential of their own mind is. How long, you know, it's just, this is the time when I think that we can do more than a classroom teacher is capable of. And it doesn't have to take the parents full time, because obviously many parents are working while their kids are in another room studying. So it's not like they can oversee this constant interaction, but the longer they can work on their own and be innovative, you have triggered something. One of my colleagues today said that, she said, I talked to her early this morning, she said, she said, I've got to work and we just got this assignment. My kids have to be, you know, with immigration and coming across, and they have to be from some country and they've got to do this whole thing. What am I going to do? And I said, you don't have to do anything. Your kids need to create something, either a hat, a sign, a dress, and create it. But we have taken on learning for our kids and taken it out of their wheelhouse. So the thing that the brain was wired to do is innovate. We see it in little bitty kids, but we forget about it, in our teenagers, we forget about it in our 80-year-olds. Creating is what the human mind loves to do the most.
Fantastic. Ronnie, anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to open it up to the audience.
Very, very quick question, Sandy. There are an infinite number of products and supplements and such on the market, which purport to enhance brain performance and function. How would you advise a consumer to determine the legitimacy of such claims? And furthermore, in any of your projected work, will you be utilizing any sort of nutritional supplements beyond dietary?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, as a culture, we want to know what can we take to be healthier and to increase our brain. And I think that, there certainly are some aids, and there is a very strong placebo effect. So I tell a lot of people, if you think it's doing better, it might be. That doesn't mean that some of them, what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So I would say, check the research that's out there. A lot of it's not that expensive, and it makes you just more health aware. I do think in the next year, as some of the brain imaging things that we're doing are looking at brain energy metabolism, I think we'll be able to get more sensitive to, is it cleaning out the beta amyloid like we know sleep does, and we can start to measure that. Well, do some of these supplements actually do that as well? So I don't want to say, no, nothing. I think we have to be open-minded to, it's got to be a concerted effort. It's not going to be a single, cognitive training or supplement or exercise or, stress management. And what we typically tell people is, Ronnie, what makes you brain healthy for the next 2 years may be very different for the next 5 years. So it may change. So the supplements, may be good when you're younger or old. It's hard to know, but I definitely think there's a place, and we have to be open to that, where people are aware. I just want them to know that there's probably not going to be a single silver bullet alone to do it. It's the heavy weightlifting for your brain is how you use it, the way you perceive your brain, how you manage stress. And one of the things I didn't talk about a lot was the most complex cognitive tasks we do on a daily basis is interact with people. If you can think of someone that you're kind of like is your puzzle of when they come in the room, you just want to go, grr. This is hard. What if you could figure out a way to find common ground and say, you see this way, I see this way, how can we find common ground? It is one of the most challenging things that bosses face, that families face, and we have become more diverse, separated. But what if we could come together, and by solving that, it is predicted to be the most coveted trait in the next 5 years is this social adeptness to relate to people that have very different beliefs from you and see from broader perspectives. And if you think about algorithmic thinking, nowhere is it more difficult than people with a lot of different opinions. And we see that when people begin to engage in this, and we actually did a lot of exercises with our Navy SEALs, with corporations to get people out of their box and really coming to common ground in practical ways to change their brain too, to make it healthier.
And no pills didn't do that.
I have
Okay, yes, and no pill work.
I have
Thank you.
I have a good question from the audience, if we can understand. Sandi, by which molecular mechanisms does brain training improve brain health? What's the difference between neuroeducation and classic education at schools? I think that's a pretty super question, if I understand it.
Yeah, so, well, there's two pieces in there. I mean, a lot of people are using neuroeducation, neuroleadership. Education is brain training. I mean, anything you do, any new learning is brain training. So, you know, it's just what you do with the knowledge is to whether it's just in one ear and out the other. So when we think about education and what we know about the brain, and how the brain best likes to learn, it can store a lot of facts, but the brain was wired to do so much more than be a fact regurgitator. It loves to innovate and create new knowledge with information coming in. So when you realize that the brain, how it likes to learn and will get excited about it, when we first started our middle school brain years with kids, you know, low, who are under-resourced, you know, the teacher said, this is never going to work in our classrooms, you know, and Dr. Gamino, that heads up our middle school program, she went in there and they read the classic text and she asked them for new ideas that they learned from that and how they could apply it to their life. And what was bizarre from that was very different from their life. And they started raising their hand like crazy. And the teacher said, my class has never done this. And she saw when it wasn't like, what's the answer, Ronnie? What's the answer, Glenda? Versus what is your way of creating some new way of thinking about this? Then all the kids started getting excited and the whole classroom changed for the semester. When they got excited about what they could create versus, oh no, I'm so stupid, I can't retrieve that information. So neuroeducation isn't just how much you know, but it's taking advantage of how the brain really likes to learn, which is what we've done. And so the science drives what we say in terms of brain training. There's a lot of brain training that actually overloads the brain and makes it harder. For example, some of the memory techniques almost make you memorize 5 things to remember one thing. Well, I'm like, whoa, you're overloading your brain to remember one thing. Just write it down if you want to remember it. It's a lot easier. So the other question was the molecular change. So, you know, looking at Dr. Merzenich has done some work more with animals. It's really hard to do molecular work in the brain of humans. We're getting at some of that with our 7 Tesla and using brain energy metabolism to see when someone improves in cognition, what happens to ATP and glucose metabolism. We're not there yet. It's still in a very rich basis, but we do know that connectivity increases the speed of connectivity in the central executive network. We know that neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, there are ways of measuring those, but at the very basic molecular level, those are animal studies where they do autopsies, and we don't do that on humans yet.
Sandi, I'll ask you one last really quick question. A listener is asking about listening to music while you work. Is that a good thing? Specific to work on the computer, or it could be a bus driver or airplane pilot for that matter. I see a lot of surgeons play music when they operate. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, so it's not a single answer. So it's not yes or no. If music helps put someone in a zone, you know, and I could see a surgeon where it keeps you kind of in a zone where you can do things that are almost rote because you've just done it over and over again. As soon as something goes wrong, they aren't listening to that music anymore. It is completely blocked out and they are focused on this. If a bus driver, you know, it helps you to stay attentive when the road can get boring and kids are loud, and it may help you get in the zone. But as soon as something goes wrong, the music goes away. Our parents, teenagers often ask us, they say I have to have my music in the background. And I say, well, you're either listening to the music or you're doing your work. But your brain has a hard time doing both. And the noise, actually, you're having to actively block it out when you're trying to learn something new. So what we try to get parents to train their kids to do is to toggle, where what if you spend 15 minutes studying no music and then 5 minutes listening to your fun music as your brain break, and then go back, no noise. And the students, when they take the challenge, they learn faster, they do better on tests, and their homework is done in a third the time. So music can be a distraction. It can be a calmer thing. If you're on rote, then it kind of keeps you a little bit attuned to something. So your brain likes it.
Sandi, I want to thank you so much. Your presentation was wonderful, and I think your answers to questions is even beyond. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you, Ronnie. And thank you for the Aspen Brain Institute.
Thank you, dear. And thank you to the audience for the great questions and getting educated and updated on the new science of brain health and brain optimization. And thank you again to our sponsors, Lugano Diamonds and Alpine Bank, and the people, our friends at Brain Futures and the American Federation for Research on Aging. I want to remind everyone about our next session, which will feature Dr. David Sinclair, professor at Harvard Medical School, with his talk, Why We Age and Why We Might Not Have to. And that will be next Tuesday. So our expert series are on every Monday, but this time, because of the holiday, Memorial Day, it'll be on Tuesday, May 26th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. So it's a little different. You can register on our website, www.aspenbraininstitute.org. Please note the different date and time. We thank you all. Ciao, everyone.